name's Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants. And today I've got a 30-day update on my fig tree. Less than a 30 update since we grafted the apple tree behind me, and the same thing, a little bit less than 30 days for the olive tree that we grafted out front. And we're going to visit all of those three. The tips and what I want to share with you are as follows, and we can read this together. I've got this hopefully fairly well organized. The goal is we're going to talk about 3 tips to managing newly made grafting unions. To 1, control the flow, and we're talking about of waters and sugars throughout the plant, specifically the black mission fig, which we're going to see in a second. And then we're going to discuss suckers and undesired growth. Secondly, we're going to talk about the balance of strengths, and then there we're going to go see the olive tree out front, the Hoji Blanca olive tree graft, and we're going to talk and compare it to an established 3-in-1 apple tree. And lastly, we're going to talk about disease and pest management, and that's going to have the natural flow from the apple tree to the apple tree grafts that we have. To begin, I want to share with my passion for plants. And my passion for plants started way back when in junior high. In 7th grade was the first time I read a paragraph in our book about this individual that created the citrus salad tree, and the concept being it was a citrus tree with multiple flavors of different citrus. When it comes to grafting, as long as the when it comes to your genus, which is the one step before species, the species identify the specifics of the plant, the genus is the family of the plant. Most plants within the same genus can be grafted with one another. For example, citrus are all in the same family, can be grafted upon one another. All the different varieties of apples can be grafted upon one another. And in this example here behind me, we've got the figs, and we've got a variety of different figs that we've grafted onto one another. And some of you ask, why? Why would you do this? For one, many of us live, on properties with limited land, and we don't want to plant 5 fig trees or 3 fig trees. And so what you'll do is you'll take your 1 fig tree, and when you come across another variety of fig that you like, I'm going to teach you different grafting examples on how to get those selected desired varieties of figs into your garden without having to go through the trouble of wasting more space in your garden for another individual tree. The disadvantage of grafting is the volume of fruit when we're ultimately done is only going to be enough for the capacity of what 1 rootstock can support. So instead of planting 5 trees, we're only going to have the equivalent of 1 tree worth of fruit, but with 5 different varieties. That's just a few of the reasons and the benefits of the reason we did this grafting project in the garden, to address some of those concerns. Going back to my junior high lessons, when I read that paragraph about that citrus salad tree, I was hooked on plants, and that's what triggered it for me. And for me, when I finally accomplished grafting successfully, which took 3 years to finally understand and understand the concepts and how to better successfully accomplish it. And we also discussed some lessons. I'm going to put all those links to those videos below. And after my 3rd year, I finally had a success story to share, and the success story was huge. I ended up taking a peach tree, and on top of that peach tree, I grafted it with 8 varieties of fruits, all in the same genus. For example, it included, and the genus name being Prunus. In the Prunus family, all of these fruit trees are related and are compatible for grafting. They include, in addition to other varieties of peaches, I had cherries growing on it, I had almonds growing on it, I had nectarines growing on it, I had plums growing on it, I had apricots growing on it, and with just a couple other different varieties, I ultimately had 8 different grafted variety plants onto 1 single rootstock of peach. And from there, and that was in 9th grade, I became, one of those individuals in our community that people would come to and ask gardening questions. And that kind of built my passion and my interest in horticulture and gardening and so forth. So I just wanted to share that story with you. And so every time I successfully accomplished a grafting project, my dad would ask, so do you think you accomplished a miracle? And I would always say, absolutely. This was really special, and it was truly exciting to see it happen. I'm hoping you share this excitement with me when I start opening some of these up for you. And my dad would say, it's not a miracle. Gardeners have been doing this for thousands of years, and it's been, proven, and it's been shown in ancient horticultural history that grafting's been done by farmers since forever, but I pulled up the definition of miracle, and I want to share this with you, and I still believe it's a miracle, and I'm hoping you two share the same logic, but I don't know why it came out mistyped like that. But miracle is defined as an effect or extraordinary event in the physical world that surpasses all known human or natural powers as ascribed to a supernatural cause. That might be a little bit too extreme, as grafting does occur naturally in nature. 2, such an effect or event manifesting or considered as a work of God. Again, maybe too extreme of a definition, but definitely number 3 and 4. A wonder and a marvel, or a wonderful or surpassing example of some quality. And as long as we use those latter 2 definitions, we can definitely say that grafting is a true miracle of science. And with that being said, let's check out some of these grafts. And the first one we're going to look at is starting with the fig. And the topic that we wanted to address again when it comes to opening the fig is we want to look at the control, the flow, specifically the black mission fig, and we're going to look at suckers and underside growth. So with that being said, what I want to share with you is this. And this here is the black mission fig. If you take a look over here, it says black mission fig. This here was grafted right up in this zone over here, which you can hopefully see behind this branch. This is the grafting area, and above it we've got the 2 stalks, one being of the green variety, which is the rootstock, and then this here is going to ultimately become the scion or desired flavor behind it, is the black mission fig. And let's first clean it up, because I want to talk about what I mean when I talk about control the flow. And when I use the word control flow, as I said at the beginning, the goal is to control the flow of water and sugars through the plant. And what I'm going to do here is just take my pruners, and the first thing I want to demonstrate is below this here again is the green rootstock, and it's created this branch that's going up. We want all of the energy and the sugars to flow through the graft and not skip the graft and put its energy into the sucker growth. So we're going to remove the sucker immediately, and then we're going to work our way up. Again, this here is the green fig, and it's growing so much. If you back up a little bit, you can see it's got this branch, that's the green fig, and this branch, that's the green fig, and this branch over here, that's the green fig. Whereas the black fig is behind here and getting smothered and competing for light, which is necessary in order to fuel its own root system. And on its way, it's going to pass through the graft union where the cambium tissues are becoming calloused and healing, hopefully, once we uncover this. So what we're going to do is I want to cut back now on the green fig, which is the rootstock, as I'm also going to call it sucker growth, and I'm just going to cut it back. And what I'm doing whenever I do a prune is I'm looking for the node, which is where the leaf comes out or it buds out, and we're just going to cut it back to about 2 leaves back all the way around. So we're just going to continue that pattern around and here, and we're going to do one more over there. And now when you take a look at the area, you're going to notice that it's mostly now the black mission fig leaves that are controlling the uptake of sugar, and that is the growth that we're trying to encourage to get accomplished between these 2 graft unions in the approach graft. Let's open the packaging. As I explained, it took me 3 years to succeed at grafting, and one of the things, as I mentioned in the other grafting videos, again, which I'll put the links to down below, is making sure that the union remains moist. And I figured if all that matters is that the union remains moist, then why not wrap it in some paper towels, some moist paper towels, and then wrap it up with like some plastic bags or Reynolds wrap or any other material to retain moisture at the site. So what we did is let's just take off these ties. And this here is the moist paper towel that we put in place. Again, it was 4 weeks ago that we did this. And check this out. Get the rest of this off. check that out. The conditions were so moist and so warm that all of these dots are like attempts to also root, but the tissues between the two have completely calloused now between the black mission fig, which is on this side, and then the green fig. And you can see that the fishing string that was used has now begun to dig its way into the wood. But I'm going to continue this to allow now open. We're eventually going to seal this at the end of the video, but you can see that it has calloused very nicely. Let me tell you. So the calloused tissue will continue to heal. I'm going to leave the string on there even though it's constricting right now upon the plant. I'm going to leave it for about another week or two. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do, again, to redirect the flow of sugars and waters throughout the plant, is I'm going to now remind the plant that what's going to happen is we want the rootstock, which is this part here, to redirect its growth into this branch over here, which is the black mission, which is this over here. And ultimately what's going to happen, I'm only going to go into it a little bit, but I'm going to cut about half the branch back right now. And you can see that I've gotten about halfway. You can see that it's definitely damaged. There's still some life in it, so it can push some life into this branch, but it's more than halfway cut through. And I'm going to do the same thing on the back side of the black mission as well, and I'm going to score it like so. And this here is just the beginning of what's going to be done now over the next few weeks. What's going to happen again is the green rootstock is going to support the black mission fig. Eventually this top will be removed entirely, and the bottom of this will be removed entirely, and this will be the new branch, and we'll be supporting the desired flavor of figs that we want. I know I've reiterated myself so many times, but I want to make sure that you understand this concept. I've noticed again down below over here, there's a sucker branch coming off the green rootstock. I just want to make sure I remove that as well, like so. And again, by removing it, the goal is I'm forcing this entire branch to put all of its resources into where I want it to, and to not potentially skip it by feeding the sucker and allowing the top half to die. We want all of that energy and resources to be forced into it, and those cuts additionally will put more stress into making sure that this becomes a successful graft. I hope you followed all of that. That was a lot of information. Let's continue. So here we are now at the olive tree that's here in the front yard, and we're going to talk about what's called balancing the strengths. Let me show you my notes again one more time so you can see what we're going to be doing. Balance the strengths. This is point 2. We're going to look at the Hoji Blanca olive graft and then compare it to the 3-in-1 apple tree. And what we have over here, if you come over, you'll notice over here is the Hoji Blanca graft. And since you can see that this was the primary leader of the olive tree, which was the Manzanilla olive variety, and it once rose about 15 to 20 feet tall off of this, whereas now it's standing about 2 to 3 feet off the ground. And then over here we did what was called the approach graft, which is one of my favorite techniques because you can do it pretty much most seasons of the year, being spring, summer, and fall. It could also be done in the winter, but it's, you know, when the plant's metabolism is slower, the success rate is a little bit slower as well. But spring, summer, and fall approach grafting techniques, and I'll put some of those, actually I'll put the link to this video up in the upper right hand corner right now. So depending on the device you're looking at, you might see it right now in the box to the right. So you can see how the approach grafting technique was done for the Hoji Blanca olive tree, or I'll put the link down below as well if you don't see it on your device. So what we're going to do here is you can take a look again. This here is the union. It has since expanded, and we're going to soon coat it with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard, which is right here. And that's also what's causing this entire trunk to also be white. When we cut the tree down, it exposed a lot of the trunk and the branches. The underlying branches that were once in the shade were now exposed to too much sun, and that's a risk of sunburn to the tree. And this here is a product that's organic compared to the chemical-based latex paint for creating a whitewash solution. It's a 3-in-1 plant guard where it's protection against damaging sunburn and insects and rodents. For use under your roses, fruit and nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. It's a non-toxic, environmentally safe, and organic product. And another thing, aside from gnawing rodents that could potentially girdle the tree, if they attempt to, you know, chew on this coated product, is this is an exposed opening over here. This is the supporting underlying wood. It's not protected with bark, which is what protects it naturally from insects. So all of these surfaces will be coated, as well as all the graft unions, until those callus tissues are healthy and strong enough. We're going to protect those as well to keep beetles and termites and other pests from laying eggs within the wound and potentially taken away from those healthy healing callus tissues, graft tissues. So what we're going to look at right now in regards to balancing the strengths is we've got our Hoji Blanca olive over here that's grafted, and then we did another approach grafting as well, which is the Toscana olive, and this here has been grafted into also the Manzanilla rootstock. And then over here, this is another Manzanilla branch. And sometimes when one of the trees suckers, as I'm kind of growing this to grow in a multi-trunk fashion, I want the base of the plant to support anywhere from 3 to 5 main trunks, and each of those trunks supporting different varieties of fruit, just as we did with the 5-in-1 fig tree. This may result in about a 3-in-1 is what I'm shooting for right now, but it could ultimately end up with a 4 or also a 5. But what I've seen sometimes occur on grafted trees is one of the sucker branches will consume all of the strength and the vigor from the root to the detriment of the grafted varieties. And to prevent that from happening, we're going to have to bring the sucker branch down, even though this is a desired branch. So even though this is a desired branch, we're going to want to pull it back down to balance the energy between each of the branches, to make sure that the rootstock doesn't decide to turn off one of the flows of sugars and waters into one of those branches to the benefit of itself. And again, the plant will always choose itself over the grafted union. That's another important lesson to learn as well. So to prevent that from happening, we're going to take some of the vigor out of this branch over here, which is the Manzanilla, which is coming directly off of its own root. So we're going to prune it to about the same height, which is going to be right here. And I'm selecting a branch that's growing away from the center, which is this branch over here in the back. And we're just going to prune it like so. I'm basically going about a 1/4 inch. If you take a look at this branch over here, we're going about a 1/4 inch above, and we're going to prune that off like so. Cut. So we just pruned this off, and I'm now looking for other branches that are growing into the center of this vase. If you can visualize this as 3 branches all growing in 3 different directions. We're even using stakes to eventually pull and shape this into a V shape, which I'm going to show you our 3-in-1 apple tree just after this. But any of the branches that are growing towards the center, we're going to remove those as well. We want to encourage all the growth to go up and away from the center like a perfect vase. That'll optimize the amount of light that each of the leaves get, which will ultimately support more flowers and more fruit. So here we go with that. The last thing we're going to do now, while we're still here, is we're going to talk about disease and pest control. And this is our point number 3 with the tips when it comes to grafting. Now that we've got this union that is successfully accomplished between the 2 plants, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to seal the wound as well. If you take a look over here, there's a little bit of a gap between the rootstock and the healing scion wood, which is the flavor of the olive that we're trying to accomplish. These gaps that are between the wood is a perfect entryway for now pests to come in, lay their eggs, and start eating some of the maybe dead tissues and underlying wood. And the wood is not the living tissues of the plant. It's the cambium tissues, which underlie the bark, that's the living parts of the plant. So we're going to want to coat that and allow the cambium tissues and the callus tissues to continue to expand and grow until those areas are completely covered and sealed. So what we're going to do is take the product, the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard, and we're going to brush that on right now. So I prepared this solution yesterday. It comes with a powder as well as an oil vial, which you mix together. And I'm just going to mix it to make sure that the oil and the solution are all in contact with one another. And again, the 7 oils that are in here, if you can zoom in over here, it says organic castor oil, cinnamon oil, clove oil, cedarwood oil, garlic oil, peppermint oil, and rosemary oil. And all of these oils are offering defenses. The first one, castor oil, is a known repellent against rodents, but the rest of the oils are excellent defenses against insects and to basically trick the insect to stay off and away from this plant. And we're now just going to take this solution. If you come in a little closer, I think it's better if you come around this way, maybe behind me. And our goal now is to seal, as we did when we initially removed the approach graft from the plant. We sealed it, But it has since expanded a little bit, and there's some more cracks which they're going to continue to just coat just those specific areas one more time. We're just going to drop some solution right in there, like so. And here we go. And we'll revisit this in another couple of months, and we'll see if another application is needed to make sure that that remains coated. What we're also going to do while we're still here, it's been a few weeks since we grafted the this Italian variety, which I got to see the name of it again. It's over here, the Toscana olive. It's been about 3 weeks, and I think by now we should also see some callus tissues as well. So we're going to remove this as well, and I'm just going to remove it like so. And again, this is the technique where we basically wrap a plastic bag to retain the moisture of a damp paper towel or napkin to retain the moisture at the graft union, which is one of the #1 reasons why grafts fail. This is a practice I've been doing since I was 12 and 13 years old, and I want to share this with you as well. So hopefully you'll be applying this technique into your future grafting methods as well. Here we go. Check that out. So with this situation, we've got a rootstock, which is the behindwood, which is the manzanilla olive tree, which is a little thicker than the Italian variety, which is right here. And you can see that it's both of them have expanded, and the fishing string is getting pressed out. This here is going to result in a bud over here. We can remove that as well. And now, just as we did with the fig tree, we're going to basically direct the flow of growth in the direction that we want it to go. So over here we've got the flavor of the Toscana olive, again on top of the manzanilla. And again, you can see all this callus tissue over here, that the cambium tissues have calloused over itself, and on the other side it has calloused the manzanilla and the Toscana variety with one another. So those two have healed onto one another. What we're going to do here today is I'm going to again direct the growth into the Toscana variety by cutting halfway into the manzanilla. So we're just going to do that like so. So that's going to weaken this branch. So I got about halfway into there. And then I'm also going to start cutting halfway into the Toscana variety as well. So we're just going to cut like so. And again, I got about halfway into that. And I'm also going to sharply prune this down to about, I'm trying to find a bud or some growth that's already existing like this here. I'm just going to cut it right there. And this here will continue to encourage the flow of juices through the manzanilla for the next few weeks, and eventually we'll remove this and then allow this to remain. And we'll review that in just a few weeks. So another point was, again, with this lesson too, was talking about balancing the strengths. And with the desired scion wood of the Toscana olive, it's a little bit too long. I want to make sure that it's a little bit more compact and that the graft is only supporting a smaller area of scion wood. So what we're going to do is, if you take a look at this longer branch, I'm in fact going to cut it down to, you know, probably a length that's in half, so that the total length is about 6 to 10 inches long. And then with all of this sucker growth, and I'm calling it sucker growth because we don't want the plant to put its energy into this. We want the plant to put its energy into the scion wood, the desired flavor wood, right past the graft. And so what we're going to do is remove, and again I'm cutting as close as I can to the stem, but we're going to remove all of this sucker growth to tell the plant that we really want you to put all of your energy into the grafted area. Because otherwise, again, if enough of this takes off, the plant could turn off the flow of sugars and waters into the grafted area, as again, it would rather take care of itself. That is a damaged part of the plant, but eventually it'll heal to become one of the stronger and primary branches to this 3-in-1 olive tree. So we're going to continue to remove these suckers from the plant as well. And we're done. Let's go check out the apple tree. Follow me. So when it comes to balancing the strengths of your trees, this here is a perfect example, and it's a 3-in-1 apple tree that I've been working on for about the last 2 to 3 years. It originally started off as one rootstock. If you come in a little closer, you can see that we've also got this sucker, which could be used again to propagate more apples by the process of grafting. This here is a unknown variety of rootstock. I believe it creates a semi-dwarf to standard size apple tree, but the goal is by grafting the desired flavor of apples, such as over here we've got a Granny Smith apple. This one over here is a family favorite apple variety we've been growing over the last 20-25 years. And I don't think it has a name. That's the reason I'm not telling the name of it. And then over here we've got a red Macintosh apple. So we've got green, a greenish red apple, and then a red apple. So those are the 3 different colors, and those are the contrasts I'm seeking to accomplish. And as you can see, it's got 3 branches. They've all been staked to form a vase. So again, they'll all have competing amounts of, or equal amounts of light. And also within the branch structure that we used these chopsticks from one of the Chinese restaurants to also space the branches equally into a vase structure. And each of these have 3 branches that are sitting on top of 3 branches, which is the original rootstock. And if you come in a little closer, I want to share with you what's happening over here. This here is the Granny Smith variety of apple, and as you can see, there's some flowers and there's some new buds over here. But these flowers have bloomed a couple weeks ago, and they're already starting to form these little apples. Whereas on this apple tree variety, which is our green and red apple, you can see it's starting to bud. I don't see any flower buds coming out yet, but I do expect it to flower. This one did support at least 1 or 2 fruit last year. And then this one, all 3 of these plants all function independent of one another. They bloom at its respective time for blooming. It fruits and produces ripe fruit at its own respective time of ripening. The fact that they're all grafted onto the same rootstock, it does not control when each of these flavors will ripen. Each of these plants will hold its and remain true to its own genetics in regards to when it wants to produce ripe and delicious fruit. And they can all be at different seasons, and ideally you'll do your grafts such that you'll enjoy apples at different times of the year throughout the growing season. So this apple over here is the Granny Smith apple, and for this one over here, you can take a look, is a mass of suckers, and these we're going to separate in a future video in the next upcoming week or 2. So another reason to be sure to subscribe down below. I'll even put the link towards the end of this video so that you can continuously follow all of these steps. And as I'm dealing with these issues in the garden, I'm hoping that you have similar issues in your own garden that you can benefit from these lessons, or at least be inspired to try within your own garden. But this here is the Granny Smith variety of apple that I grafted on top of a dwarf rootstock. This is a rootstock I've been using from year after year for the last 25, possibly 30 years. This is an apple variety that this particular rootstock produces trees that typically grow about 8 to 10 feet. So any of the apple varieties you graft onto this rootstock will only have a height of about 8 to 10 feet. So we grafted the Granny Smith apple tree. The first thing I want to share with you, and I know this looks harsh, you can see that it's blooming these beautiful little pink flowers that'll eventually open to white. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove the flowers. And the goal is we don't want the plant to put its energy into supporting any fruit in this first year. And I know this looks quite dramatic, but it's necessary. If you don't do it, the weight of the fruit will actually tear the graft union apart. And now, again, part of lesson 2 is the balancing the balance of the strength is to remove these suckers that are below it. So we're going to remove all of the rootstock attempted growth, and you can see that there's even some roots coming out because of the way, with my grafting method of wrapping it with a moist paper towel or napkin and then wrapping it in plastic, it encourages even roots to come out at this level. But we're gonna cut all of this off. We're gonna clean it all out, as far as we can go, and we're going to do an even better job when we finally separate this particular rootstock from the other rootstocks that are behind it. But you can now see the graft union is right in there. And what we're going to do next, and you can take a look all the way around, you can see that this side attempted to make its roots, but you can see there's a perfect opening right now again for beetles and other insects to get right into it and lay their eggs and start hollowing out the wood. And the wood again is the supporting structure of the plant, whereas the living tissue is the cambium tissues that underlie the bark. But what we're going to do is we're going to coat this also with the Ivory Organics for the purpose of controlling pest management. So here we go again with the product. So we're just going to stir this one more time to make sure that the oils are in contact with the rest of the solution, and then we can just brush that on like so. And we're just going to get as much as we can all the way around it, recovering the callus graft tissues, any openings, and we're just going to go all the way around like so. And also by coating it, as we've said before, this is also going to minimize the risk of any sunburn to the bark. So again, it can put its energy and resources towards growth rather than repairing damaged tissues. And there we go. We've now got a beautiful dwarf Granny Smith apple, which we're going to have to separate in the upcoming weeks. That'll be another project to take care of. And now behind us, so this is an example of a cleft graft. Behind me is the approach graft. And check this out. Over here, we've got, I want to show you the colors of what we did. The product comes also in color brown as well as color green. And these are examples of where we coated it in the green Ivory Organics, and over here the brown Ivory Organics, and below we use the white, as we've been using and demonstrating for all these other purposes. So if there's a purpose for cosmetics that you're looking to accomplish a specific color in your garden without having to make everything look whitewashed in the color white, you can whitewash it in the color brown and green as well. And take a look at all of these beautiful flowers. This here is the apple variety that I told you about. We've been growing in our family for about 25 to 30 years. And this here is a green, tart, and sweet apple that's mostly green, but it starts turning red as the sugars in the apple become sweet. And it's a prolific apple. It's a medium to large size apple. And we've been just grafting them year after year from house to house to make sure that we've always got to enjoy these beautiful, delicious apples. And I'm hoping once you come across something that you like, you use some of these techniques that we've discussed in these videos to bring some of these beautiful and delicious flavors to your garden. What we did over here is you'll notice that this pot has an M11 rootstock. You can take a look at it over here, and you can see where it says right over here, right over my thumb, it says M11. And M11 is a standard variety of apple rootstock that typically produces trees that will grow anywhere from 15 to 25 feet large. So here we just did a Granny Smith that's going to grow about 8 to 10 feet on a dwarf. Now we're going to take my favorite apple variety, which I believe is resting also on a dwarf rootstock, and we're going to now make sure that it's going to grow, if we can find a home for it, 15 to 25 feet on this M11 rootstock. And what we're going to do, and this one here is already healed and grafted as well, so we're going to pull these two approach grafts apart. And keep in mind, we did all of this in just 4 weeks. I can probably pull apart some of the fig grafts, but I'm going to be a little bit more patient with those and give them a couple extra weeks and just watch how they respond to a couple of partial prunes and see how they recover over the next couple of weeks. And then we'll do the final grafting video on the fig in the upcoming couple weeks. So with this, again, if we follow it, we're going to remove, again, off the M11 rootstock, any of the suckers, because again, we want all of the M11 rootstock to just support the grafted variety. So this here is M11, we're going to throw that away. And we're going to follow M11 going up. And this here is another sucker. This here is another sucker. And now the goal again is we want M11 to support this wood over here. And you can see the callus tissue between these two trees is right there. And it successfully did the same thing on both sides. So what we're going to do here, so now we're just going to go with our pruners, and Again, we got to be careful that we don't prune in the the wrong branch, because that'll be a wasted 4 weeks of effort. M11 rootstock goes up. We now remove the M11 off the back side. So there that goes. This is the M11. And now we want the M11 rootstock to support this growth over here, which is, if you follow it, goes down into this container, which supports these delicious apples that we know produce a very delicious and flavorful apple that'll now be growing on the M11 rootstock. And now in regards to height, I see that there's too much height. There's about 2 to 3 feet of growth. There's no need for that much growth. Again, I want all of this energy, and again, as it continues to heal, to go into a smaller section. I'll cut it now down to about 6 to 8 inches. And again, we're just gonna find the closest node. If you come around this way, you can see, actually I'll make it easier for the camera person. You can see that there's a bud right over here. We're just gonna cut at an angle, about 1/4 inch above the bud, and there we go. So this will be now the desired flavored scion wood, and now we're gonna cut off the back, the reddish green apple variety that our family loves for the last 25 years. And we can now remove this pot. And check this out. We'll set this down over here. So we'll continue cleaning this out. So here's the M11 rootstocks comes up. This here's another sucker branch. We'll remove that out. And that M11 rootstock will now be supporting the reddish green flavor of apple. And you can see we've already got a little bit of growth over here, but I expect all of the buds to swell and grow and create a couple of branches from this point going up. And again, for disease and pest control, we're gonna take our Ivory Organics. Before I use it, let me stir it one more time, and then we'll apply it like so. And the string that's around it, I'll remove it in the next week or two. I just want to see that it's healing on and supported, and I'll gradually release the ties off of the plant. And there we go. You might see that some of it is dripping down to the ground. No big deal. It's all organic parts that are in it, organic oils that are in it. We're not dealing with, if you take a look down here, had this been latex white paint, then we're dealing with a product that's gonna last decades, not a year or two. For the purpose of sunblock protection, the product will stay on the plant for on average about a year. For the goal of making sure that the oils are available, if the goal is to protect and offer it a defense to insects and rodents, it's recommended on the label to apply it as often as 3 times a year. The other thing I want to share with you before I let you go is the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 ready-to-use spray bottle, which comes like this. And this here is a 3-in-1 plant guard spray on your trunk, branches, and leaves, protection against damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents. Ideal for newly installed plants and trees. Non-toxic, environmentally safe, and organic product. And with this solution, you can simply shake it and then just spray it. And over here right in front of me, I've got the an avocado, and you can see if by spraying it, today's going to be, you know, in the near 90s. You can see that it's got a nice organic sunblock shield to help keep the leaves several degrees cooler. This is highly important if you know there's a heat wave coming through. Some of these leaves you can see underlying were damaged by sunburn last year. These were some of the young leaves that were unprotected. They got burnt by some of the hottest days. Here's another one. They got hit with, you know, some of the hottest days. But the goal being, one, if you know there's a heat wave coming, to spray it. If you know, if you're going to be transplanting any plants through the spring and summer, this is another great way to keep your plants, you know, several degrees cooler, so that it doesn't go through the risk of heat stress, which could compromise the life of the plant. I'm not going to continue unwinding the rest of these figs, and I hope to share some more surprises with you in regards to the successes of this 5-in-1 fig. I hope you found this video informative and educational. I'm going to put a few video links in the corners to this video for you to click on that are related. The rest of them will be down in the comments below. I hope you found this video informative and educational, and if so, be sure to like it. Most importantly, by subscribing below, you'll be connected to all these other educational gardening videos. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.